Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
So about 2 weeks ago, we had I had my last Dharma talk, or my first Dharma talk as Shuso, and I had a Dharma talk lined up about being a home leaver, and two-thirds of it is written out, and I just needed to flesh out some things. And then about Friday, I noticed, we have a sewing retreat going on. And so I decided I wanted to talk about the Okesa and my experience with the Okesa and what I think of it. And so yesterday, I started writing my Dharma talk. I had some idea of what I want to say and the point I want to get across, especially within the context of the Dharma talks that I'm giving. And one of the things that I find out is, or one of the things I find incredibly funny is that Esho is upstairs listening and she's not down here. So if I say something wrong, I fully expect her to come down and throw her phone at me or something. But anyway, so let's have some fun. So today we're going to talk about the kesa, the robe. And I'm going to approach this from my perspective from the past 16 years. In 2010, I took precepts with Suiko Redding and obtained my Dharma name, Myogen. In 2024, I ordained with Hoko and started wearing the kesa. These are two totally different things. Where I pine for the easy days of wearing the rakusu. The robe may seem like a simple piece of cloth and cloth sewn together, but it's not. There are three aspects. Part of my research for this was I reread Tomoe Katagiri's book on the Okesa, sewing the Okesa, the history and whatnot. And there are three aspects of the kesa. There's one as cloth, one as a religious symbol, and one as dharma and mind. And I think that we're going to really focus here more on dharma and mind than anything else. Because the kesa is a series of dharma gates that deepen our practice. And if I benefit from it, you also benefit from it. So the reason why I took precepts with Suiko was I was attending the Dharma Bloomington Normal Zen, the Bloomington Normal Zen group, or now known as the Dharma Wind Zen Center. Dharma Wind because Bloomington Normal is because it's a play off of Bloomington Normal, Blono. And one of our members who happened to be an Assembly of God preacher, let that sit in for you for a second. An Assembly of God preacher sitting with you while you meditated, and she was doing the same thing. She always asked me questions about Buddhism. I was one of the few dedicated Buddhists there, and it concerned me a bit. It didn't really, not concerned, that's not a good way to put it. It made me realize I needed to step up my game. That if I was serious about this, and I was, that I needed to do something to show that I was serious. And so I took precepts. And one of the things that and when I approached it, I've already hinted at this. I approached it, it seemed to be that the rakusu was a sense of authority. And that, because I wore that, I knew what I was doing. And that was really, really, really far from the furthest thing from the case. My apologies, I can barely read this. But there are some things that I learned when I sewed the rakusu. One of the things that I learned was that I had patience. And I also learned my line for who I thought I was, or how I thought things were. And then there was a line, across that line was reality, totally different from what I thought everything was. It was very difficult for me to sew because I've never sewn before. How many here, like, of all the kaite, how many here have sewn before? See, this is, even Tomoe Katagiri would tell you it's like totally radically different than normal sewing. But once you start to sew the rakusu and the kesa, it is, completely different than like mending your socks. And for me, I headbutted Zuiko a lot with this. My standard joke was that there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in my rakusu, and it was all Zuiko's. What I did is I brought a lot of preconceived notions to what I thought a rakusu was. But when I sit back and and look back at the experience, when I look back at the sewing of when I sewed my rakusu, it taught me patience. It taught me to step back a bit and to just be with the cloth. One of the things that we were told to do was, for each stitch you make, you say, Namue, thank you very much. Namu kie butsu. What does that mean? I honestly think it means stitch one, take two out. I'm really serious, patience. There is nothing more unnerving than spending all 2 hours. I would drive to Cedar Rapids. It was a 3.5-hour drive, spend all day there, and then drive back. And one of the most unnerving things was to go there, spend all day sewing. You get done, you make progress, and Zuiko comes in and takes out all your stitches. So you have to start all over again. Well, it makes me want to pull out my hair, but back then I had long hair, so I did. So it was a little fraught with, but over time I began to realize that by sewing the pieces together, you're not really sewing, you're sewing the dharma. And in sewing the dharma, you have the big piece, small piece, the big pieces and the small piece, and they alternate. And then you have your yos. And the big piece and the small piece, it doesn't matter which one, it does matter how you put it together, yes. But once you're done with it and you have the alternation between the pieces, you begin to see that within the Dharma field, it's an even playing field. Big, small, doesn't matter. It's the Dharma right there. With Zuiko, in sewing, we had the pleasure of having Tonin O'Connor come and visit us several times. And there are a lot of stories of Tonins sewn into my rakusu. If you have ever met Tonin, you know three things. One, she knows the Dharma. She has a wonderful grasp of it, and it's just beautiful to listen to her talk. Two, she has a deep, deep love of theater. Three, she really does not like to sew. Oh my. She would tell you stories about how, or like, she would tell you stories of just basically of how she would try to sew and couldn't, or how her robe was falling apart, all that other fun stuff. And it kind of fit in a bit. It was wonderful to commiserate with her in a way that, yeah, you knew you had to sew. You knew you had to do the okesa. You knew you had to do the rakusu. And you knew what it meant. But also at the same time, it was kind of nice to commiserate and just say, yeah, this is a pain. So one of the things I did when I started sewing the kesa was I dedicated a shirt to sewing. And I wanted to, and I did, for the most part. Every day that I sewed, I wore this shirt. And let me show it to you. And you might have to do a zoom. This says, you know, you can learn to sew. And if you see it, it's a cute little girl sewing two shrunken heads together. And one day, Hoko and I were at Cedar Rapids, and Tonin was there, and Tonin and Zuiko were sitting at the dinner table, or just at the table talking, morning talk. And I said, hey, Tonin, do you want to see my sewing shirt? And she said, sure. So I unzipped my jacket and showed her, and it was this shirt. I broke her. She was laughing so hard, she nearly fell on the ground. It's kind of an indication of just how frustrating sewing can be for a non-sewer. But I think ultimately when we think about the Dharma, and when we think about the Dharma, it's okay. I have my finished products, but I also have my kvetching, so to speak. And I still hold those kind of dear. And I want to reiterate something here too. You think I'm kind of joking about how difficult this can be. I would like to point out and remind people, there are a couple people here in the room that were with me at the time, that when I sewed my black rakusu for ordination, I sewed that thing to my fingers 5 separate times. It's not an easy thing to do. And the other fun thing is I'd be 2 stitches in and then go, wait, what? What? But as I started wearing my rakusu, over time, I started to let go of the ideas of what it meant to wear the rakusu and what it meant to wear and what it represented. One example, I mean, there are many, many different Dharma gates with sewing. And there are many, many different dharma gates with the rakusu and the kesa. And I'm just going to simplify this and say robe. I'll give you really a good example of how it kind of opened up for me is that in my name, Myogen, it's shining foundation, Myo, bright, shining, Gen, source, mountain. And it was a confusing name for me at first because like, why did I get it? Why did I have this name? And over time, as I was studying the Dharma, and as I sat and as I practiced, I began to realize that I was just folding into my name, that that's who I was. And with the rakusu, I was doing the exact same thing. With the robe, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm falling into who I am. And a lot of it is with a lot of patience. The idea of the robe became less and less of an idea and more of just a robe, and that opens up to more gates than the idea of a gate. If you have an idea of the gate, it's closed. There's nothing going through it. But if you have a gate, it's open, and you have to figure a way through. And the robe helps you do that. One of the biggest gates that I learned is that you cannot sew the robe alone. When you wear your robe, you're with the Sangha. They help you sew it. While the pattern is of a rice field, it's more like a physical representation of interconnectedness. And I had standard jokes for everything. One joke was, if someone would see my robe and go, "Oh, those are some nice stitches," I'd say, "Oh, those aren't my stitches. Those are Doju's or somebody else's." And but the thing is, I would not have been able to sew anything if it wasn't for a teacher, if it wasn't for the Sangha. The teacher helps you put everything together and gives you guidance and structure. They're the guardrails. But it's the Sangha that also helps and lifts you up in sewing. So we would trade pieces of cloth and sew each other's rakusu, robes. We would ask other people to sew our cloth, so we would have their stitches present. Yeah, I have fond memories of sitting with my Dharma brothers and non-Dharma brothers. Paige Applebaum, she was sewing with us her robe. That's the only time I've ever met her, but it was a fun time. It was a nice time. And within the robe, within the context of the robe, it wasn't just cloth, it was Sangha, it was community, and it was doing things together as a team. The biggest gate, another gate that I learned with the robe, Another thing I learned with the robe is Sanshin. The three minds, Daishin, Roshin, and Kishin. So you have great mind, parental mind, and joyous mind. And I remember when I first started sewing the robe, I came back here and I was talking to Toda-san about it, and I was like, I see these in my stitches. You see the whole thing in front of you, the robe. You kind of have an idea. The sewing teacher really knows how it all goes together, but you don't. But you start to see how it goes together. And so you start seeing the big picture. And it's kind of, oh, this is kind of nice. And then you have each individual stitch that you make. And, you know, namokie butsu, namokie butsu, namokie butsu. As you're stitching everything, you're approaching it with parental mind. You're trying to get it at it with a gentle mind of not perfection and not, well, this is good enough, you know, good enough for government work. I can say that because I work in the government. But so you're applying the parental mind to it to get to it right. And the thread breaks, you have to rethread the whole thing. You're midway through, how do you do it? Piecing together threads, piecing together other pieces. It can get rather frustrating, and you're still, instead of yelling and screaming at your robe, you just like gentle parental mind. How do you coax this in together and get it to where you need it? That's also describes like when you're, I'm not sure how we sew here at Sanshin, but in Cedar Rapids, we sewed on the line. And so you'd always you'd sew, look back, see if it was good, sew, look back, see if it's good, and keep going. And if the line started to deviate, you're like, okay, what do I do? Do I need to change something here? Your parental mind's just going way overboard and haywire. Do I let it go? Will it correct itself eventually? And the joyous mind is when everything works out. It looks good, it's wonderful, and you didn't have to do much. It's like, and you didn't sew it to your hand. And one of the other things that I've learned about this is daishin. It holds both the good and the bad stitches. It's your effort that you made, everything that you put into it, good, bad, ugly, it's there. And that is your robe. And, you know, like, my favorite thing about my robe is that there was an end that was, the measurements were off, and so in the end, instead of doing 3/4, we only had to do a 1/2 inch. It's like, oh, no one will notice. It's right in front. I notice it all the time. But with my practice, good, bad, it doesn't matter. It's everything that everything that my robe is everything that I put into it. But not only what I put into it, but what the Sangha put into it and what the teachers put into it. I was kvetching with my friend Beth earlier today. Hi, Beth. She's up there on the TV. And she reminded me of the one time, or she reminded me of one time I spent 3 days at Cedar Rapids sewing 2 lines. Got done with it. Everything was wrong. Everything that I had just did and a couple months other work was wiped out. We ripped it out, and then she basted it all back in right. And like, oh, okay, that took a year. But it was well worth it in what we did and what she did. And for me, as a lesson in the Dharma, It was a beautiful lesson in the Dharma in that things don't go your way. What you have is what you have. The thusness of the robe was there. It didn't meet the measurements, and so I had to meet the thusness. Instead of crying about it or lamenting about it, I had to just, I had to roll up the sleeves and start all over, which was fine. The gate for the robe, the gate of patience, is a big gate when it comes to the kesa. It's an important gate when it comes to sewing. And it's even a more important gate for putting it on. Yeah, Hoko's laughing. But how many of you, but I mean, I didn't think none of this occurred to me when I wanted to ordain. None of it occurred to me of how much of a pain it is to get everything on. I mean, with sleeves like this, you put the robe on, you gotta take, there've been times I've got kind of moved the sleeves over. You can't do it that way. It doesn't work with the robe. So you have to take it, sweep it over, get everything around. It's dark. You're wearing black. You're putting on black. Black on black in dark. Oh, Buddha. I mean, it is just frustrating. And then you get everything. And then the other fun part is you get everything backwards. You know everybody's waiting on you. Everything's backwards, and so you have to try to redo it. You don't know which way is up. There is a precise way of folding the kesa that when you unfold it in the right way, everything falls into place. In getting to that point, you have to have patience. Whenever I lose patience, I get angry. And I kind of make broad, sweeping gestures when I get angry. And you can't do that when you're putting on the kesa. And you have to learn. This is just the difficult part of putting it on. This is the difficult part of wearing it. Well, also the heat, sweating everywhere. That's why I have this. But it's a gate that is open to you 24/7, 7 days a week. Every day you sit, you have to sit with the frustration of getting the kesa on. Like I said earlier, I pine for the days of the rakusu. But that's just me. We've been chanting the 10 excellent merits of the Okesa, and in it, it says, the Kesa protects you from crossing the ocean. You won't fear dragons or harmful beings. And I truly believe that that is the case. Because if you have no idea of how to sew a kesa, and you sew one, it teaches you how to be patient, but it also teaches you how not to fear. When a string curls up and you end up knotting it, when you sew your finger to the thing, that was always fun. When I first sewed the rakusu, there was no way in heck I was going to sew anything else. Paige had even told us a story how she had her backpack stolen and her rakusu was in her backpack. And so she had to sew another one. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm treating this with kid gloves. I don't want to have to sew another one. I moved here, and when I was here, I bought a condo, and I was moving into my condo. I lost my rakusu in the move. I could not find it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to sew another one. And then I thought, well, if I have to, I have to. It was that gate that opened up for me, that let me see that with the things that I do, with the things that I had done, I could do it again, that it wasn't that big of a problem. In that all my kvetching, all my head shrinking, yeah, all of that was just for naught. So when it comes time to sewing, I've actually volunteered to sew other people's garments, rakusus or kesas. But other people have other things in mind for me. And I'm okay for that. So how does this all fit in with my theme of the Ongo, being and becoming? When we approach the rakusu with a preconceived idea that it is that the rakusu is this, that it's this, that it's this, we're stagnating the rakusu with being. We're telling it that that is just that what it is, and that's not the case. With becoming, we have our gates. We have the dharma gates that open up for us. And I'm kind of vague on which dharma gates that are open up for us for the robe and for the rakusu, because straight out, I don't know what all the gates are going to be. I'm still learning. I'm still processing this. And I still, this July will be 2 years that I've ordained, and I will still be the last one getting the robe on, and I will still be struggling with it. But I do know that I will keep an open mind to it, and I will see my robe as a vessel, and I see my robe as a vessel of the dharma, something to respect. So when I wear it, I try not to sit on it. Funny story. I was at a funeral. I was at my cousin's funeral, and so I wore my full kit. And she happened to be Mormon, and we were at a Mormon church, and we were eating dinner, and I had taken my robe off, and I had forgotten. And so I'm going to sit down from dinner, and so I'm trying to lift up my robe. For about 3 minutes, I'm trying, where's my robe? I can't find my robe. And I'm like, and then I see it right in front of me. I'm like, oh, okay. And so but I mean, it's not something of lifting up the robe in order to sit, so you don't sit on it, is not something of body memory. It is respect. It is realizing that what you wear is precious. It has something. It holds something, and you're holding it. Not only are you holding it, you're transmitting it. So if you're thinking of ordaining, these are some things that you have to discern and think about. And for me, it makes me happy that I'm holding something. It makes me happy that I am transmitting something, because for me, I see this as something as worthwhile. I would rather deal with reality than my ideas of reality. I would rather have my rakusu sewn to my hands than dealing with an idea of what it means to have a perfect stitch. So with that, I will take questions. Thank you. Yes, Mark. Joey.
Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting, conversation, partly because I can really relate what it's like to project an idea on, the rakusu that I'd be wearing. For some people, I remember it was probably, 6 months after I actually took precepts that I started to sew for a rakusu. After I sewed the rakusu, I went off to California to get to have the calligraphy put on it. Got lost in that process, and at the time that it was getting lost, there was a lot of this part of me holding on to this idea. I'm like, wait, but I sewed that. I took those precepts. I sewed that. I worked hard on that thing. Like, why don't I have this rakusu, right? And so there's a lot of this sort of attaching an idea onto it. Hoko lent me her old rakusu that I probably had for well over a year. And there was a point at which that I finally kind of let go. After a few months of that, like, wait, why don't I have my rakusu? Why don't I have my rakusu? There's this point that it's like, okay, well, that's actually not the point. And the practice that I had from actually sewing it was deeply valuable enough as it is. And so I think it was probably just about the time that I let go of it that Sokan came back from California with my rakusu in hand with this beautiful calligraphy. And so then it just became this kind of reminder almost now of what it actually means to attach yourself so much to that idea, because the rakusu, it's not like a certain color belt that you get in karate after having accomplished a particular level or anything like that, but it does manifest in your own commitment and devotion to the dharma. And that's something that probably took me actually losing my rakusu to actually avoid projecting my idea of what it actually means to be wearing a rakusu. And so I'm not sure that that's a question as much as it is just an observation to throw out there for that discussion.
And I lost mine too for a short time, and it kind of makes me want to say we all should lose them at one point in time. But I'm not going to say that because I don't want to have to restart sewing. No, with that, I'll say if something did happen, I have no problem. It's just. It's just, there's a certain sense of humor in the world, and we don't really acknowledge it that much. Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for such a really lovely Dharma talk. Oh. That was really very moving, and it was wonderful to sort of be right there with you with your struggle with this. And I think in our small group of kaite, we're learning the kind of intimacy that comes with working in silence with other people, and I think you really expressed that beautifully. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you for that lovely talk. I just want to ask you a question. When you decided to ordain, it was about a decade after. What was your process of making that decision? What led you to make that next step?
Wearing black was cool.
You want to be the man in black?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was in there, and I knew enough to know that that was not the right thing, a good reason to ordain. We are going to chant the Heart Sutra for the World Peace Ceremony after this, and the reason why is because I wanted to do something. I was frustrated with the killings and the shootings. More importantly, as I was discerning but it was the Las Vegas shooting that threw me over the edge. And the reason why was, if you remember, it was some guy who just had a whole bunch of guns and killed 50 some odd people at a concert down below. And I knew if he could have seen a different way, he would have chosen it. And it's Buddhism that teaches me a different way. The best example I can give you was I was traveling when I moved out here. My mother lived up in Bay City, and I would go see her on holidays. And so I did, for the first time in my entire life, I traveled the day before Thanksgiving. I've never done that before. And so I drove from Normal, Illinois to Bay City. It's a 8-hour drive. It took me 12 hours. And as I was driving it, though, every time I hit a city, I would get in dead stop traffic. But then my favorite part was being in the middle of nowhere in dead stop traffic, bumper to bumper. And every time I did that, every time I got stuck in traffic, I was okay. I wasn't mad, I wasn't angry. It was like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm having to deal with. All right, no problem. I just need to find a bathroom. And all types of things are going through your head when you have to go to the bathroom and you're stuck in traffic. But it's that sense of everything being okay, faced with the problems of life, that the problems that life throws at you. That's what I wanted. That's what I wished that guy could have experienced. And so hopefully one of my aims for my practice is to help others also realize that. How to do that, I don't know yet. But thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so Esho's online, so you might hear a scream when I say this. So one of the things I'll tell you is a really good joke. Tell your sewing teacher that you washed your rakusu in the washing machine. Watch their eyes go, what?
Abby has a question.
Oh, Abby. Yes.
Yes. Not a question, a comment. Wait, I didn't mean to do that. 1 minute. There. Whoops. Okay. There, I heard many helpful things in this talk, for which I thank you. But I just want you to know what the very simple phrase that is going to stick in my mind for sure, which was at some point in your travails with sewing, you said, "It's just me."
It's just what? It's just me.
It's just
yeah.
me. And of course, you didn't mean it's just me in the sense that it's only me. You meant it's just little old me that I'm going to keep in proportion to its importance. And I think that's very important. It's just me. It's not such a big deal. Because we're always going to be traveling around with this just me.
Mhm.
And we need to accept it, but we also need to remember that it's a little me. And
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
oh, thank you. Yeah, and one of the themes running through my head lately has been that universal and singular. Yeah, it's me. It's singular. I'm in there, but I also am the universal agent of action the agent of being right here, right now. And having those two coalesce at the same time is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I was actually thinking about you when I was writing this last night, because you did sew yours for the most part by yourself. But then I remembered, oh yeah, you would send it here for critiques and whatnot, and then for corrections. So but so I should say that I really shouldn't have any trouble with sewing in comparison with your travails.
Well, I I had a lot of experience sewing, so um, it came relatively easily, but relatively. But but again, that that little expression is applicable all the time to everything.
It is. Thank you for pointing that out too. Any others? Owen.
Maybe kind of continuing with this little me idea. You continue to come back to this idea of patience throughout your talk, and wondering what you kind of think about how it applies to this framing that I've been thinking about, which is about hindrance, basically. And I imagine that there's somewhere a line in there, and I think it's in your talk, between here's a hindrance that I kind of can't do anything about and just have to, as you're saying, be patient with, right? And then here's some hindrance where there's actually something kind of developmentally purposeful to do with it, right? Which also takes patience, but also maybe has a little bit more of a, I don't know, a teleology or like direction that it's heading, right? And I think your talk here mostly describing the first set, right? Where sewing's never going to be my thing, never going to be a skill I have, and I'm never going to really want to do it, and yet somehow here you are kind of consenting to like doing more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm just interested in, I think, that distinction and that difference. Yeah. So what do you think?
I'm not really sure how, I'm not really sure on the line of the distinction of hindrance.
Let me see if I can think of it any differently. Some things that you're going to accept about yourself that are just here's how they are, and they're maybe not what I prefer, and then here's something that meaningfully can be responsive to effort, right? And actually kind of transform in some way, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there is no hindrance on anything, really, because, hindrance, obstruction. There is no obstruction. There is just the thusness that we deal with. Now, what we want to deal with and what we get are two totally different things. And, I still struggle with that on a daily basis. So, really can't add anything to that.
Well, I recall an interesting teaching from Uchiyama Roshi, and I can't quote it directly, but the point he was making was when, if I'm going to paraphrase him, when we believe there's a problem to solve, we've run into a hindrance. If we sort of don't understand this thing in front of us as a problem, the problem goes away, right? So in a way, we invent our problems. If there's simply universal functioning and we've run into a hindrance, is that a problem? It's a problem if there's a goal that little me is attaching to. If I simply see the functioning, there's no hindrance and there's no problem. Now that's not a way to avoid our bodhisattva responsibilities in the world, right? That's not a way to look away from suffering. We can't just say, well, there's no suffering, everything's perfect, because we know it's not. But I've actually got that little thing from Uchiyama Roshi tacked to my wall, because I want to make things into a problem and then I want to solve them, because if I solve them, I'm somebody, right? So how can we see hindrance as hindrance without turning it into something I need to overcome in a way which is about attaching to small self? So are there things about myself that I can't change? Probably. Is that a problem? I don't know. I mean, we have to be careful about our skillful action. Am I doing something that's skillful and wholesome with that, right? So, can we simply reframe the problem and say, is it really a problem? Is it really something I have to do something about? I think that helps us make a choice about what is skillful action. and what do we leave alone? I'll just throw that out there for. Yeah? Okay. Too much for me.
Is that all?
Well, you looked like you might have been expecting a response. And
No, no.
What's happening is
No,
perfect.
I'm throwing out there for discernment, that's all.
No problem.
All right, is there anything else? Anybody else? Shall we end this?
Yep, let's do
And
world
have
peace.
tea. And we're end this in world peace.
Okay.
So thank you everybody.